So while Brian mashes out, it's the dirty job, he loves it. I'm going to show you the rest of the process. So once we boil the wort, which is basically just sugar water, we boil it, like I said, for 90 minutes. And when we're done boiling it, we do something called a whirlpool, which basically is a way to spin it to separate any solids that are in the kettle. They collect on the bottom. The solids are called trub, T-R-U-B, and we don't want that in our fermenter, so we separate those. They stay in the kettle, and either sometimes we're even able to send those to the farmer with the grain if we have time, but for the most part we send that down the drain. And now that we've whirlpooled, we rest that wort for about 30 minutes, 20 to 30, and we want to cool it down rapidly because we're going to add yeast to it, which is a living organism. And our yeast here at Mayflower, and like any yeast, it's not like hot liquid. We want to cool that down to about 70 degrees, and at that point, we'll pitch the yeast. So we send it through a heat exchanger. The heat exchanger right here is set up, basically it flushes cold liquid in one direction, hot liquid in the other, and what it allows us to do is control the pace of the water going in the heat exchanger. Will help us, it'll determine how cool we can get that wort. And we can cool it down anywhere down to 50 degrees up to about 70 degrees. We aim for about 70 for our ales. This whole contraption here is basically an air purifying system. We send air through a sintered stone that's actually inside this tea that we're basically aerating the wort in place. Now, like at home, when home brewers aerate, they usually shake that carboy up. We're basically doing the same thing by pumping air into it. We're not using oxygen, we're using an air compressor, so there's oxygen and nitrogen in there as well as what other inert gases are in the air. And we're banging it around pretty good to get as much air into that wort as possible. This is a clean, sterile environment, obviously, so that's why we have these little filters. This one and this one are both filters, so air purifiers. And we set this temp, we'll know that it's about 70 degrees coming out by hitting this thermometer that's got a little stick inside. And it comes out of here, and it goes, you follow that orange hose, and it goes all the way to the fermenter. We're going to be knocking out into. Now these are kegs, but they're not just kegs for beer, they're kegs for yeast. This is how we label our yeast. Our yeast is called 007, and it's really called 007. It's not some secret agent. This is the second generation. I pulled it from batch 43 of Golden Ale on 24th, just 7 days ago. It's fresh. It's ready to go. We try not to store the yeast for more than 7 days. So this is about the last we would use it. You can go about 2 weeks with yeast in the fridge, and that's no problem. So what we do is we have the hose set up. When we're ready to knock out, which is about maybe 2 hours from now, we'll open up that valve, and I'll actually hook up a contraption that consists of a coupler like you'd use to tap a keg, a clean sanitized tube, and a clean sanitized tube with an air line. So I'm pushing, again with our compressor, into this keg, and I'm hooking this keg up to the racking arm, and I'm metering the yeast in as we go. So we know that the yeast is mixing in really well with the wort, which is pretty important. So I'm going to open this, and there's probably a bunch of water here. No, maybe not. So I think the most important thing is that we're harvesting our yeast clean, and we're pitching it fresh. And that's going to give us a really lively, happy fermentation. We ferment our beers here at about Golden Ale and Porter are about 65 degrees, and we do the IPA and Pale Ale at 68, 69 degrees. And we're getting at that elevated temperature in those two beers, we're getting some like esters that we want to bring out more hop profile, and we want a more subdued ester profile in the other two beers, the Porter and Golden. So that's why we do that. But we do use the same house yeast for all of our beers. Now, some of the the specialty beers, like the Summer Rye Ale and Thanksgiving Ale, we use different yeast for it, and we bring those yeasts in when the time is to make those. So as far as the primary fermentation, we kind of do it like clockwork here. I'm brewing on Wednesday today, and I'm crashing the beer down to 32 degrees next Wednesday. I do a diacetyl rest after that primary fermentation is done for 36 hours, and then I crash it down to conditioning temperature, where it will sit for anywhere between 1 to 2 weeks, depending on the beer. We'll also dry hop at that time. Right at the end of primary fermentation, we dry hop both the pale and the IPA, and I pull yeast out of those beers first, just in case if I need the yeast. I don't want to dry hop it. I can't get yeast out of a beer that's been dry hopped. So the beer will be in here, like I said, 2 to 3 weeks, and then it's time to then filter it. We do filter all of our core beers very coarsely. We use a digestation certain filter, which is over in that corner, and we use something called perlite, which perlite is basically it's in substitution of using diatomaceous earth. Diatomaceous earth is non-renewable. It also is starting to have a lot of iron in it, and we don't want that in the beer, in the filter medium. So we're using perlite, which is a renewable resource, and it's a little better for the environment. It's actually a little bit safer for the user as well. So we filter it from the fermenter, through the filter, into the bright tanks. And the bright tanks are out back here. If you want to climb with me through this little maze here. Come back here. And these are the bright tanks. So we have 2 bright tanks, one 20 barrel and one 40 barrel. And we have 6 fermenters, 4 20 barrel fermenters, and 2 40 barrel fermenters. Gives us a brewing capacity of about 4,000 barrels.